The fastest way to tell if you or someone else is autistic is to ask them what the worst sound in the world is.
Do y'all think I'm autistic?
Some of you are about to be real mad at me. And if you are, I encourage you to ask yourself, why is that? Have you heard the phrase, we're all a little autistic, floating around on social media? Or how about, I think we've all got a little touch of the tism. Problematic. I have endured my fair share of autism accusations for reasons I cannot comprehend. God forbid a girl has a bit of whimsy. Don't say I never taught you anything. Did you know that if you put grapes in your lips, you'll look like a goat? First off, I want to say there is nothing wrong with being autistic. That is not what this video is about, because I know how y'all like to put words in people's mouths. There is something off-putting, though, about the age of self-diagnosing, armchair diagnosing other people, especially people we don't even know, and the dilution of clinical speak. That is what this video is about. Because all of a sudden, autistic doesn't mean a genetic condition that causes you to experience the world differently from most. It means quirky. And this generosity in definition is doing more harm than good, in my opinion. But before we jump in, hi, my name's Ashara, and I'm so glad you're here. Stick around, peruse, and if you're up for it, maybe subscribe, maybe leave a like, maybe comment, and we can have a conversation. That'd be cool. And if you're interested, please check out my Instagram and TikTok, because I make videos there too. Okay, let's get into it. I think it's important we start off with a couple of definitions of what autism actually is. That way we can know what it isn't. The BBC defines autism as a neurodevelopmental disorder, which often involves differences in thinking patterns, sensory processing, communication, and social interactions. Autism Speak says that autism or autism spectrum disorder refers to a broad range of conditions characterized by challenges with social skills, repetitive behaviors, speech, and nonverbal communication. And the DSM-5, aka the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, recognizes two main symptom areas: deficits in social communication and interaction, and restricted repetitive behaviors, interests, or activities. So, does it mean you have autism if you're a little socially awkward? No. Does it mean you have autism if you have difficulty maintaining back and forth conversations, have auditory and sensory issues, don't understand sarcasm? Maybe, but we would need a professional to actually diagnose you first. According to the Centers for Disease Control, autism affects an estimated 1 in 31 children and 1 in 45 adults in the United States today, meaning not everybody has it. In fact, most people don't have it. I'm going to be super clear here. It is not something that everyone has a little bit of. Not at all. How did it become such a popular topic of conversation in the first place? Well, with the rise of popular media surrounding autism, for example, like Love on the Spectrum, which is a Netflix hit reality TV series where people with autism try to find love, autism has been thrust into the cultural zeitgeist. There's also scripted shows like The Big Bang Theory and The Good Doctor, and they've been positive representations of neurodivergence. It seems like we're all at least slightly more aware of autism now as opposed to 20 years ago, which is a good thing. But there does seem to be a lot of misinformation spreading around as well. We've seen a lot of conversation about autism online, specifically in political spaces, specifically about where autism comes from. I'll let you know it's not vaccines and it's not Tylenol either. I would argue that social media has done a lot to make people more aware of neurodivergence as a whole, and people with autism are a huge part of the neurodivergent community. So it makes sense that we know more about them today. There's a lot of big creators online that are definitely educating people, and there's also a lot of creators that don't seem to know much but are also miseducating people. On social media, at least, it seems like any behavior that is deemed not normal or a little bit weird or quirky is suddenly labeled as autistic.
My dad looked me straight in the face and said, "There is no way autism runs in our family." So every time he goes on a walk or goes on a hike, he brings back his favorite rocks. Yeah, no way autism runs in our family, right?
So I've started getting into like puzzles and stuff on the weekends. Oh, sounds like someone's got a touch of the tism, if you know what I mean. Not everything is a symptom of autism. Sometimes people just enjoy things.
But how did we get to a point where being a little bit weird means you're autistic? There seems to be this big conflation of odd and neurodivergent, but the two are not automatically the same. And this is how the dilution of clinical words begins. Remember when gaslight was a clinical term used for describing very specific scenarios in which one person was misrepresenting reality and distorting it so much so that another person had to question their entire existence? And now it just means somebody's lying to you? Yeah. Therapy speech has worked its way into normal speech, the normal zeitgeist, except it seems to have lost all of its actual meaning. Suddenly, it's completely normal for everyone to know a narcissist. However, narcissistic personality disorder is only found in less than 5% of adults in the United States. So the chances that you actually know and communicate with a narcissist on a daily basis is very small. They're probably just self-absorbed and rude.
People hate it when I say this, but your ex probably wasn't a narcissist. He probably wasn't. He probably was a selfish, terrible man who treated you like trash, but that doesn't mean, clinically speaking, he was a narcissist.
The same thing has seemed to happen with ADHD. Suddenly, so many people feel like they have ADHD because they have shorter attention spans. But really, their shorter attention span can be attributed to scrolling culture and how we get bored super easily and move on to the next thing because there's a plethora of media available all the time. It's not that they have an actual medical condition. What once were clinical terms have now become colloquial. And that's not really a good thing. And semantics and etymology really do matter here because how we think and the language that we use really shapes how we perceive the world around us. And it's important we label things accurately. Now, I will say learning about neurodivergence or some sort of disability online is not inherently a bad thing. You get to have a first-hand account of someone's actual lived experience, and you get to ask them questions and even form a community online. That's a good thing, sure. But self-diagnosis can be a little bit dangerous, especially when it comes to how to medicate yourself. And especially when it comes to diagnosing other people, because you are not at all a professional. People watch one celebrity interview where their vibe is like slightly off, and then suddenly they're able to diagnose them with some serious illness because they have a doctorate in internet psychology. Girl, what? A study from Drexel University actually found that only 27% of the most popular autism-related TikTok videos contained accurate information. That's scary. I don't know. 27%? What happened to the rest of the percentages? So they don't actually have accurate information. And people are out here assuming that they do. That's not good. Like, is anybody else saying, oh, this is bad? Self-diagnosing has the potential to take away from the experiences of people who are actually autistic. If autism just equates to being quirky and having just an eccentric personality, then why is there a need for accessibility in spaces? There wouldn't be a need for one. The need for accommodations then becomes undermined. Dr. Diane Franz, who's a pediatric psychologist at the Children's Hospital of New Orleans, explains it so well. She says, the tendency to look for a diagnosis to explain any variations in personality and behavior takes away from accepting normal variety among children and adults and minimizes the significance of living with the significant disorder that impacts many aspects of the person's life. Okay, and how did we get here though? It seems like we're in an age where anyone can be an expert except the experts themselves. We have a serious mistrust and distrust issue when it comes to people that supposedly have academic authority over us. We're seeing the anti-intellectual movement, the anti-science movement. It seems like people just don't trust any information that they get that isn't from their own research. And I use the term research very lightly. Research isn't like peer-reviewed papers, it's just a Google search and a Facebook result. Dun dun dun!
While I do think the self-diagnosis is necessary for a lot of people, especially marginalized people, I also think that a lot of you are not doing your due diligence to make sure that you are actually, correctly self-diagnosing. Unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot of people self-diagnosing just by watching YouTube videos or TikTok or listening to their friends' lived experience, but that's not enough. You need to know and comprehend the diagnostic criteria. For example, for autism, do you know what stereotypies are? Do you know why they're important for the autism diagnostic criteria? Do you know what age autism symptoms had to present in order for you to have autism? And don't get me wrong, diagnostic criteria are fallible. But if you don't even know them and you don't have the ability to comprehend them by learning like professional scientific language, then you really shouldn't be self-diagnosing. You have to put extensive research into understanding the disorder you think you might have, as well as a host of disorders that it's often misdiagnosed as. You have to be aware of comorbidities so that you can identify which symptoms are from which disorder, and so on. You have to dedicate so much time to research if you're going to do this and opt out of seeking a professional diagnosis.
Self-diagnosing and armchair diagnosing puts an average person on the same level as someone who has spent their entire adult life or educational life learning and perfecting their craft in this specific field. That is a false equivalence. And I do think the algorithm is partly to blame here. If you watch and maybe engage slightly with a video that has very generalized information about autism, or one true quote and 7 false quotes, you're more likely to get info or videos that are similar to that original video. That's just what the algorithm is. It sees you like something, it's going to show you 10 other videos that are just like it. And this can then lead you down a hole where you have a lot of confirmation bias, or just bias in general. You see so many ideas that are contrary to what is actually real, but because you saw those first and you keep seeing them, you're attached to them and you're less likely to let them go when presented with new information. We've seen this happen with vaccines. We've seen this happen with the whole pasteurized milk debacle. People were drinking unpasteurized milk because they said, I don't know, it tastes better, but then they were getting sick because of the unpasteurization of it. Yeah, girl, people. I think the other part of this has to do with this need for self-categorization, or categorizing everyone as a whole. Like, we as humans love labels. We seem to have a very narrow, and growing even more narrow by the day, idea of what human behavior should be. And this doesn't allow for the natural variations or variety of human behavior that there actually is. So any deviation from this strict definition is now classified as other. And it can't just be other, it has to have a specific term attached to it, like ADHD or narcissist or autistic, even when that behavior doesn't actually qualify for these very specific clinical terms. Do you see what I'm saying? Basically, we don't just let people live and be people. They have to be categorized and organized a specific way.
I do not understand what people on TikTok think autism is. Like, it has lost all meaning over the past couple months. If you do any like slightly niche activity, any like hobby that requires a little bit of brain power, there's gonna be 500 comments being like, I wish I had this type of autism. Is this guy fucking acoustic? Is this guy autistic? Like,
but how did we get to this very narrow understanding of humanity in the first place? Why do we have to have these labels? I don't know, girl. I'm just on YouTube, okay? I'm just giving you a couple ideas. Hopefully you can answer it for me, maybe give a theory. To be clear, what I'm saying is that the dilution of clinical speak and clinical terms has gone hand in hand with self-diagnosis and diagnosing other people without a medical degree, and that then undermines people who actually do have the authority to diagnose people, and it undermines the lived experiences of people with those actual conditions. And we have explored how this happens through the topic of autism. Okay, well, that's pretty much all I have to say right now. Those are my musings on the subject. I feel like I've just been seeing way too many people in comment sections and way too many videos saying, oh, we're all just a little autistic. No, that's not true. And I wanted to figure out, how did we get here? Why is this happening? What are the consequences of it? And so thus this video was born. If you resonated with it at all, if you liked it, if you hated it, had any strong reactions, please leave a comment because I would love to chat about it. Please like, maybe subscribe, maybe share. That'd be cool. Thank you so much for watching. Much love always, and I will see you when I see you. Bye.